And it's definitely my pleasure tonight to introduce Sean McGee to the council and the ones in the gallery. He's had an extensive career in public works, and we're looking forward to him working in that position for North Huron. It's probably too soon to have any report or anything from you, so only if you want to say hello, that would be it, Sean.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. And also, Larry McGregor, I guess this is his last official meeting with us. He's been the jack of all trades from CAO to Director of Public Works, as well as a number of other things to help us out in our transition. Thank you very much for your assistance, Larry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Reeve. I would like to thank the staff and the council for all the help you've given me. It's made my job here a lot easier. And I wish you all well in your future endeavors. I know you have some challenges, but I think you're up to the task. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Moving to confirmation of the agenda. Councillor Syke, Deputy Reeve Campbell. All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. None noted. Moving to the consent agenda. Is there any questions or comments on any councillors? Like,
yes, Reeve. Question on, not really a question, I guess I would like to see, or if fire chief or someone at a future meeting could just, looking at 4.2.3, the finance information that was presented by the Director of Finance, the part where the ESTC, understanding that we know we are in a transition, but understand that I would like to know as an account where we're going to land, where we think we're going to land by the end of the year for the ESTC. The revenue is extremely low, and it is noted in the file that it's going to be extremely low, but I would like to understand what that deficit in that department is going to look like in another 2 to 3 months, just so we can get a gauge of what that looks like. And I know we've been given some preliminary what looks like the business plan is going to be, but if there's any change based on Mark's early transition here and what Ryan has thought, if there was any change to what that business plan looks like for 2018, that would be, I guess that would come at the budget time, but I think it would be at least prudent to ask those questions now as opposed to wait till a month and maybe they'll come then. But I'm a little concerned about that figure. It's a daunting number, so I want to make sure that we understand what we're up against.
Anything else?
I move the acceptance of the agenda.
Okay. And Councillor Knott seconds. All in favor? Carried. Okay. And moving to 5.1, the Huron Cycling Advisory Committee, update on Huron County cycling strategy and successes in 2017. Julie Sawchuk and Bob Pike. Whichever is going to start out here.
He's Bob and I'm Julie. Thank you for having us. Bob's going to start.
I need to sit, I need to go to the glasses here, so please bear with me. We're just going to take a few minutes tonight and run you through our presentation. I'll start, Julie will pick it up, and then we're going to have some closing comments, and then we'll take any questions or comments that you may have. This presentation is just for information. We're not asking for anything tonight. We do hope, though, that the perspective we bring to you tonight will be helpful in your future decisions, and that in the future you will be quite happy to support the initiatives that our advisory committee is coming up with. So with that, before I go, I just wanted to refer you to this logo that you see on the screen. This came out of from a young man in Bayfield, and if you look at it closely, it is a logo made up of the H for Huron, the C and the C, and then the S for strategy. And it's positively brilliant. It really is a good logo developed by this young man. So just wanted to acknowledge
Even
that.
wearing a helmet.
Even wearing a helmet. Yeah. So we're quite proud of that particular thing. So let me see if I can do this. Can you do that?
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so the cycling strategy was developed under the leadership of the health department and the planning department. And that's important because what this is all about is about the future of Huron County. Okay, you might be asking yourself right now, why are we talking about cycling? You might be like I was 10 years ago, and cycling certainly wasn't on my radar. And I hadn't been on a bicycle since I was in public school, which was a long time ago. So if you think it's not important, I'm going to tell you that this presentation is not about the health of cycling. It's really about the future of our communities, the health of our people, and the health of our environment. And so that's why this is important, I think, to you people as leaders in our community. Okay, Jimmy, we'll go to the next one. So first thing is, why is cycling important to you, and why is it important to the community? Again, this model came out of a report, a Huron County report called Take Action for Sustainable Huron. And what this is all about is that if we're going to grow our communities, we're going to have healthy people, we need to do activities that contribute to each of those segments. In other words, anything that's good for the health of all three is something that's sustainable. Anything that works against any of those things to their detriment is something that's not sustainable. So what we're looking for our future is activities that are contributing to all of those, and cycling is one. It's one of many, but I think if I take you through this cycling presentation, you will see the things that are important for our future. So I'll let you read this. And then I will tell you what cycling is. Okay, cycling has very different aspects. It is a recreational activity, but it's also a means of transportation. It's what we call active transportation. Now, you may not be aware that cycling is actually one of the fastest growing recreational activities in North America. It's growing. More people take to cycling than take to golf. Cycling is considered the new golf. There are serious cyclists and there are casual cyclists. So people who do it recreationally are different types. You will see some of us out on the road in our spandex shorts and our colored shirts and tearing down the road as fast as we can.
We call them mammals. What does mammals stand for? Something.
Middle-aged men in Lakewood.
Yeah, something like that,
And I am definitely approaching middle age. But there's a large group of cyclists who devote their cycling onto bike trails. There's a large group of cyclists who go to communities that are bike friendly now, and they take their families and they bike. There are people who just casually will ride bikes around town for reasons I'm going to explain to you. There's also the transportation aspect. More and more communities are creating opportunities for people to use bikes for their parents to go to work, go to school, to go shopping, visit other friends. Okay. We'll skip that. Come back. So, cycling improves people's health. Healthy people and for healthy communities. Cycling keeps you active. A lack of physical exercise or activity is a major risk factor in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, in cancer, hypertension, bone and joint disease, and depression. But as we age, taking responsibility for our health becomes a bigger and bigger issue. Cycling is a good way to deal with that. But of all the activities you could do, why would you choose cycling? Let me give you 4 quick reasons. First, cycling is a non-impact sport. Most everything you do requires impact on your knees and your joints. And that becomes increasingly difficult for people. There's no impact when you do cycling. Secondly, it's non-weight bearing. Even walking, you don't bear your weight. 2/3 of adults in this country are either overweight or obese. So it's especially good for people in that category. It makes sense. Thirdly, you can do cycling any way you want. You can do it high intensity, low intensity. You can do it for a short period of time, a long period of time. Weather permitting, you can do it on roads, paths, various places, wherever you are. Fourthly, did I mention that it's free?
Not yet, that's the first time you said it.
That's the first time. It's how many activities can you do that are free and good for you? So those are reasons why cycling is a choice as an activity for your health. Okay, if we go to the environment, we all know that greenhouse gas emissions are a major problem that we're going to have to deal with. And interestingly, 1/3 of those come from transportation. So certainly, riding a bike is part of the solution rather than be part of the problem. You might be interested to know that Canadians on average take 2,000 trips by car each year of less than 3 kilometers. On good weather, many of those trips could be made by bike. Those short trips are going to be made anyway, so they can then contribute to the activity that people need to sustain their health. 2.5 hours a week is all that people need to be more healthy. Most don't get that. In fact, young people, 91% people under 18 do not get an hour of activity per day. Cycling can help. We have a lot of statistics, and I won't go into them, that document the economic boost to an area that's bike friendly. I can tell you locally, places like Port Elgin and Southampton are attracting a lot of tourism. The camping up there is the same as everywhere else, but it's the bike trails that attract people. It's a definite tourist draw, and becoming more so. And of course, if we could reduce all the burgeoning healthcare costs by making people healthier, that would be a huge boost to the economy. And of course, reducing the impact of pollution will also be a boost. So that's just a few comments about cycling. So I'm going to turn it to Julie, who's going to pick it up.
So it's important to recognize that, like Bob said, the foundation of the cycling strategy and the cycling committee in Huron County was sort of a partnership between the health unit and the planning department in the county. So if you think of those two groups, right, the health unit looking after the health of people, and then the planners that are going to take that information and do what they think is best for planning for the communities. It's a fabulous partnership for the foundation for something like a cycling strategy. And those two groups of people, as well as some random people interested in cycling, were already starting to talk and make plans and say, hey, we need to really start putting our wheels on the ground and making a plan for Huron County so that we can make Huron County a more bike-friendly community. And that was, 2014, 2015, and then I got hit by a car. And it sort of was a spark that made more people go, yeah, we really need to do something to make Huron County a more bike-friendly community. And then the cycling strategy was approved by the county, and from that, a plan was made for the formation, or a proposal was made for the formation of the committee, and the committee was approved by the county. And so now the committee's been in place since January 2016. And we have been working, a small group of about a dozen people from all parts of the county, every municipality, most of the towns, working on making plans to help Huron County become a more bike-friendly community. So what is a bike-friendly community? It's a community that has bike paths. It's a community that has education about safety for people that are doing the biking, as well as safety for drivers, and doing things like promoting the 1 meter safe passing law, helmet safety for kids. What am I missing? Oh. Different education events we have done.
Yep.
We had the very first bike month. June is bike month in Canada, and so we had the very first bike month event. So if you look at the little breakdown here, we've outlined some of the actions that are now, next, and later. The now is the 2017, so we've got the Cycling Strategy Advisory Committee, coordinated by the health unit. Laura's doing a fabulous job keeping us on task and keeping things rolling. Planning cycling routes. We have designated certain roads in the county as a particular bike path through the county. It's really hard. It's really hard to come up with what is the best, safest, the best paved roads, the best route to get around the county for people who are wanting to ride for training purposes, right, for fitness, and for people who are wanting to ride so that they can get from place to place. We all know that riding from here to Blythe on County Road 4 is a no-no, right? Nobody in their right mind would want to do that. Even County Road 25, where I live, where I was hit, same thing. Not a particularly great road to ride on because of the speed of the traffic and the amount of the traffic. So trying to find, and Bob and I were just talking about how hard it is to find a north-south route.
Right.
If we wanted to do a group bike to Cowbell, for example, right? A destination for people to ride to, we need to have something in place in order for people to be able to do that safely. So we've done a lot of around the table, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make it work? And we haven't come up with any suggestions, but that maybe that goes into one of our asks, is that in future planning for the township, that be something that gets on a checklist for the works department when they're thinking about what roads are going to get paved or worked on next, or all of those kinds of things. So anyway, we'll move on. The Share the Road signage plan, we're into phase 2, I think, of the Share the Road signage plan. You've all seen the Share the Road signs that are on the exits of each of the small towns. They're also at the entrances. Wherever you come into the county, I am often down to London, and so I see it every time I come back into the county. Addressing this distracted driving, the OPP had a great little booth at the IPM, helping people understand about distracted driving. It's something that I speak about when I speak to school groups. Improving the G2G trail. On my skinny wheels, it's pretty tough going in a lot of spots because of the bigger gravel and just the thickness of the gravel in some spots and the trees and all of that. So that's something that our group is helping support, is improvement to the G2G so that more people can get along at more of the trail. And staying current on best practices for infrastructure. There has been some talk about paving shoulders from a provincial point of view, and I don't want to say too much about it because I was getting a bit of mixed messaging from some of the provincial MPPs that were involved in discussing that, but I'm hoping that there will be some support from the province for more of that to happen in the future. So moving on, we do have an education subcommittee, so that's already in the works, and I know we'll be planning for bigger and better events for Bike Month for June 2018, which will of course be promoting cycling activities, and we hope to have some pilot projects. I know one of the things that we talked about is creating a Huron County focused like a 1-minute kind of video, promotional video that is filmed in Huron County and addresses the 1 meter safe passing rule. And my vision of that is not just about safely passing cyclists, but all of the other things that are on our roads that aren't necessarily on everybody else's roads, like combines and Mennonite bookies and whatnot. So that's on my list of pilot projects. And later on, we'll be developing a school travel, an active school travel subcommittee. It would be great to have more kids riding their bikes up the hill and less parents sitting outside the school and waiting for their kids. Get more kids on their feet and on their wheels. Yes, so that's sort of our plan. We accomplished quite a lot of that in 2017. So what can we and you do to help support cycling? We just need to talk about it more. We need to get more people on their wheels. Get your kids out, get your grandkids out, get your grandparents out. I get my parents out as often as I can. And one of the things that one of the other things that I wanted to address, and Bob talked about it earlier, about the importance of making Huron County a bike-friendly community from a health point of view. That's why I'm still involved. You might be looking at me thinking, what? Why is she still involved in this? She got hit by a car while she was on her bike. Why on earth would she be supporting cycling? And I tell you, I have heard from a lot of people who have stopped riding their bikes after my accident. And at first I was like, well, yeah, I wouldn't be riding my bike either if I knew, right? But it's about health. If and when I can get back on a bike, I will. Because it's about health, it's about fitness, it's about being outside. And it's all well and good to go and take your kids to the arena to play hockey, but that doesn't do anything for you while you're sitting there drinking your coffee, watching your kids. But if we all went out as a family on our bikes, not only do we spend time together as a family, we're outside reducing that whole nature deficit disorder that everybody suffers from, and being fit and active, spending time together. So,
And it's free.
and it's free. Spread the word about riding your bike. The Huron County Cycling Strategy, we've started a Facebook group to help and to share posts about things that you can do with your bike, ways that you can help maintain your bike, ways that you can help other people get on their bike. So there's lots of ideas that are always coming up on that. And think about cycling when you're making planning decisions. I think it would be a fabulous thing for the town of Wingham trail to be made into a loop and to loop down to the arena, so that if you are going to the arena, you could ride your bike there instead of having to negotiate street traffic. So that's what I would love to see. We would love to see as a committee. And we're asking this of all of the municipalities. We're doing our little roadshow to all of the townships, to all of the council meetings, and asking the same from each. So I know we are looking for a representative from each township to sit on the cycling strategy committee, so that regular reports can be made as to sort of what's happening next and what we can use your help with. That's it from the cycling strategy point of view. If I can put on my other hat, which is just the Julie Sawchuk hat, I would like to see, I'm going to ask that the Township of North Huron be the first township to put bumper stickers on all of your township vehicles. Show little bumper stickers. You have them in front of you. I'll let you think about that. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask of the cycling subcommittee?
Councillor Syed.
I don't have a question. I think we have a comment though about, so many times I've heard around the council chambers, and that is we need to put things in a rural lens. We got to look at everything in a rural lens perspective. I think the more talk we're about the initiatives that we run into on a day-to-day basis, we need to start putting everything in that particular lens. We're talking about planning roads, that type of stuff. Who all use the roads, not just who's the majority of the users or whoever is the biggest impact to those. We need to look at things and strategies that will help all those that are impacted to that, whether it be paved shoulder, whatever the case may be. We need to look at those things in that context, in that lens, not just always what's the majority or the major impact things, because I think that's what happens. We get lost in the translation of, oh, a road is such an important thing, or it's an important thing to a car. But it's not. Because again, we've heard today, we've heard before, some people need those roads just to get to work using a bike or their feet or whatever the else case may be. So I think we need to, instead of just looking at everything as a rural lens, we need to look at the impact of all impacts that affect things when we're thinking about strategies about roads and impacts that we're going to do to our infrastructure. I think that's important.
If you build it, they will come, so they say, right? And if I use another example, we've been trying to get any storefronts that have a one-step to have the stopgap ramp, right? And we've run into people who have said, well, I don't have any people in my store that use wheelchairs, so I don't need one. Maybe that's because they can't get in. Right? So it's the same idea. If you build a bike path, it will get used. If you pave a shoulder, it will get used. I actually have borrowed a bike. It's a hand bike, and I have been on the 6-kilometer section of paved shoulder that is from Ben Miller to Salford. And it is so lovely. It's so lovely. It's wide, it feels safe. And it works. Lots of people have been on it. Lots of people have taken their families on it. Right? Bob and I were talking, we were looking at the numbers. I didn't tell you the numbers. Do you have the numbers there? Oh, you've got the numbers.
That particular, there's a lot of controversy about cost of paving shoulders, and most of the research will tell you that paving the shoulders will pay for itself in the course of 9 to 16 years. And if a road lasts 25 years, then for the balance of that period, you're actually putting money in the bank. So you're ahead of the game. The road that was done over at Salford was a $3 million project, of which the shoulders cost about $500,000. So they were about 20% of the cost of the road. But those shoulders were 10 feet wide. 10 feet wide is wonderful, but I can tell you as a cyclist that you would be happy with much less. Okay, and I'll just tell you that if that was 20%, if you had 1 foot of extra shoulder, 1 foot, that would cost you 2%. 2% of the cost of the road. What is 1 foot to a cyclist? When you're riding down a road and you're trying to stay over by the white line, the amount of space you have beyond that white line is usually about the width of the white line, sometimes a little more. But and you're trying to, as you're going at speed, you're trying to maintain yourself on that little piece of road, which is right at the edge, which is subject to cracks and crumbles and gravel kicking up on there. And you're trying to be wary of traffic. If you had 1 foot more, 1 foot of road, and you're on a bike, you're centered on your bike, half of your body is sticking onto the road. That's about 1 foot. If you had 1 foot over, talk about your life.
If I had an extra foot, I wouldn't have been hit. The car that hit me, the passenger mirror hit my back, broke my lower back, and my white cycling shoe left a line down the side panel of the car. So if I had an extra foot, likely I wouldn't have been put in the ditch. So not that we're saying we want just a foot, more is better. But it's certainly something.
It's certainly something to consider when you're doing your plan.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all we're saying. I think anything when you're doing your planning, one of the things that you don't think about that we think about is how you connect from one road to another. And our biggest challenge as cyclists always is how do we get from A to B on a road that's safe. So as we said, we have this new cowbell brewery. We'd love to bike down there. How do we get there? It's a challenge for us. How do we get there safely? That's the challenge. So when you're looking at side roads, if they can connect up, That's always what we're looking for. How do you connect up municipal concession roads to each other? That's important. And in the community, just like, I can only speak for Wingham, but, you drive around this town, you don't see a lot of bike racks. As we talked before, if you see a bike rack in front of the post office or the grocery store or at the coffee shop, that people are gonna think about bikes. If they see bikes there, they're gonna think about bikes. If they don't see a bike rack, they won't. They won't even think about it. And they'll just drive, And our town is not particularly friendly. If you try and negotiate up Irene Street with a bike, it's difficult. If we could find ways to get into certain of the malls, like if you went to the Value Mart Mall, you came in from behind, over by the complex, that would be a lot safer, a lot easier, more people would do it. We're trying to get people to make these short trips around town for their health. That's what we want.
Pat?
I was just gonna add the one challenge that we have, and I think that would also strengthen your message is, I'm wondering if this Facebook page is a network, because we all get people saying, are there any bike clubs? Are there groups that go out biking? How do I reach out to them? I mean, we always just give them Bob's number, but it would be helpful if you almost had a buy and sell website like that. I went on this route, I found this great. I'm looking for someone to ride with on Tuesday. There are a lot of people who want to connect with other riders, and we're not sure as a rec department who to connect them with. So I think that would not only strengthen your case and your cause and your numbers, it would help us connect the people who want to bike together.
Yeah.
So I would be interested in anything we could put in our rec and leisure guide like that to help our community reach your goals.
We'll bring that back.
Great.
So in speaking with Laura, she indicated that you were hoping to have a person identified as to who the information can flow through. So we do have a motion here for that.
We're good with that, yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'll just make some comments. It was interesting, the discussion at County Council over doing that test strip. That we know that it's used for Ironman competitions and things like that. But seeing the number of people that use it, I was going to say every weekend, but it isn't necessarily weekends. It's most nights through the week and stuff. And unfortunately, the biggest motivation for the county to have done that was there was a lot better price on asphalt this year than there had been for the last two. So, well, if we're ever going to do that, this would be a good time to have done it. And the thing of it is, I think it's just showing the amount of where people want to travel, and when the roads are being done, they are being scheduled. Possibly there's going to have to be the cycling advisory working with the county works department on the redoing the different roads. And the one thing that it's been mentioned, having one extra foot. County Council has pushed for there to be at least a foot. And it's better if it's 18 inches on the outside of the solid white line. Pardon me. But the thing of it is, with 90-kilometer traffic, driving 100 kilometers, there's enough draft off some of the vehicles. I think that we have to look at probably a minimum of 4 feet outside that line. And I'm not against that.
Good.
The thing of it is, can't all be done in overnight. And thank you for formalizing the bike strategy into the committee. And I will have Richard read the suggested motion.
Sure. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the presentation of the Huron County Cycling Advisory Committee for information purposes, and further that the clerk shall be the main point of contact for the Huron County Cycling Advisory Committee to send communications to be distributed.
You're moving?
I'll make that motion, but I'd like to put an addendum on there for you, just to support that we place the share the road sticker bumper stickers on all of our municipal vehicles in order to support them. It's a good educational tool.
Seconder. Councillor Ritz-Muthaninga. All in favor? Carried.
I'd like to make another announcement. I've got a supply of the metallic I share the road strips in my car. I'll bring them in after our break if anyone would like one. They are metallic and they'll stick onto your car.
And the share of the road has come out of cycling, but it is needed for a number of other modes of transportation and other road users. So that, thank you for taking the lead on it.
Any idea how many you need?
Looks good.
Feeling that when they came out 2 years ago, Kelly went around and did most of the trucks. So I think if you were to leave us a dozen for now, and we know we can find more from you for the municipal.
Pat, I'm gonna give you this whole stack.
Sure, we can have them at the complex and at the counter here too.
The more the merrier.
Sure.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay. And moving to 5.2. This is one of those things that happens. I'm pretty sure Kathy is into the third decade of working for North Huron, formerly starting with Wingham. But I do know she's still considerably younger than me, so that I want to say thank you for all the years, your dedication to municipal work. It has been much appreciated, especially in the last 10 and a half years that I have worked with you closely, and I would open it if any of the councillors have any comments at this time. Just saying thank you to Kathy, being as this will be her last official meeting as an employee. Thanks.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to Kathy. Anytime that you need to talk to somebody about something, Kathy is always the person you talk to. If she didn't have the answers, she would certainly get the answers. And I really appreciate working with Kathy.
Brock.
And I'd like to add my thanks to Kathy as well. But I would like to point out that she has fans beyond this room. My wife has lectured me many times about how lucky we are to have Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Richard?
I just wanted to point out that there is a come and go celebration for Kathy scheduled for October 24th from 3 till 5 here in the council chambers, and it is open to the public.
And no cameras allowed.
There will be a speech, right? By you?
So, big photo of Kathy.
She really likes it.
Oh, dear.
Here's one to go up there. Maybe
Told you to
it's better
get this
light.
photo someday.
Right over there. Right there.
One, two, and three. Gotta make sure we get it right. We get one shot, right?
You know, once you turn that camera upside down, so you're standing on your head.
Okay, moving to 6.1.1. And this is a repealing of bylaw 14 from 88.
Move it.
Councillor Biden seconds.
Or your second, you're going to reject.
Any discussion? That this is a bylaw that just outlived its usefulness is the best way of explaining it. All in favor? Carried.
We're probably the last municipality in Ontario to repeal it, so it's our place in history.
Okay. And 6.1.2. The emergency management program, Richard.
Sure. So the recommendation for this one is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the October 16, 2017 report of the clerk/manager of IT regarding appointments to the Emergency Management Program Committee for information purposes, and further that Council amends Schedule B to bylaw number 63, 2017 to appoint alternate CEMCs and appoint the CAO as Emergency Information Officer, and further that Council amends Schedule C to bylaw number 117, 2016 to appoint 5 individuals to the Emergency Management Program Committee as required by the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act and Regulation 380/04, and further that the primary members appointed to the EMPC be the Huron County CEMC, the alternate CEMC, the CAO, the Director of Public Works, and the Director of Fire and Emergency Services, and further that the alternate CEMC be appointed to chair the committee, and further that Council approves an exception to Section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 91, 2017 to be passed at the October 16, 2017 council meeting.
Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hallahan. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. And 6.2.1, Source Protection Plan Transfer Agreement.
The recommendation for this one is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby enters into an agreement with the Osabo Bayfield Conservation Authority for the implementation of Part 4 of the Clean Water Act Risk Management Services, and further that the 2017 water budget be amended to reflect the amount due on December 1st, 2017, and the balance required to be transferred from reserve, and further that Council approves an exception to Section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 90, 2017 to be passed at the October 16th, 2017 council meeting.
You're moving?
This is a 5-year agreement, correct? Is this not, is this 5 years or 3 years?
I'll double check with Dawn on that one.
No, actually, it runs till December 31st, 2020.
Okay, it's 3 years.
And a seconder? Deputy Reeve. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. And 6.3.1, North Huron Museum Facility Condition Assessment. Richard?
The recommendation we have here is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the report on the North Huron Museum Facility Condition Assessment from the Director of Recreation Facilities for information purposes, and further that Council directs staff to review future options for the facility and bring a report back to North Huron Council.
I would like to make that motion,
Okay,
and I'd like to make a comment on it if it's seconded.
okay. Councillor Knott seconds, going back to Councillor Vaughn to comment.
It's a very, very big decision. It's a very expensive renovation. And I think we need to think not just in terms of the need for the renovation and the value of it, but we need to think forward to what we plan to do with the building after it's been renovated. This council has never shown much interest or support for museum activities. We've never had any program funding for it. We've never had any permanent staff, at least for many, many years. And it's largely been an afterthought. If it was even an afterthought, would have been an improvement perhaps. But anyway, I think we need to consider whether we are going to do the next step and create a museum in that building, which at the moment we don't have. We have a lot of old stuff stored in the building, but we don't have a museum. We don't have any professional staff. We don't have any plan. We don't have any, and it's not a particularly good building as a museum. I mean, it's what we have, and so that we may have to be satisfied with that. But I think there are an awful lot of things that staff will need to take into account, and we as council will need to do a lot of thinking as to how much we're going to support the follow-up to renovating the building, and what are the other options.
Councillor Syed.
I think there's a follow-up too with Councillor Biden's comment. I think it comes down ultimately, from my perspective, is what's priority and what's not. From an infrastructure standpoint, what do we need buildings for in the municipality? What do we not need buildings for in the municipality? What infrastructure do we need to maintain within the municipality to make sure we're viable and sustainable? Outside of that, we need to make sure to understand, do we even need them? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons why the comment was made that we haven't been very interested in whether it's a museum or not is because it hasn't been a priority. There's been many, many other infrastructure issues that we have come to the table that we haven't even done those ones. If I even wanted to talk about the water, like the standpipe and that type of stuff, there's lots of other things on the table that haven't come to the top. And I think we have to look at what are the major priorities for services and infrastructure in this municipality, and not just because we've always had it. That is the nature of the beast that we've been living for 25 years, and I believe we cannot live that anymore. We need to figure out other options.
Councillor Hallahan.
I agree with Councillor Syed too, and I think we've had a warning from, or at least some suggestions from our former CAO, Barry, that we have to start looking at very seriously of where this money's going to come from and what our infrastructure we're going to be working on, what we really need.
Councillor Knott.
I'm going to agree wholeheartedly with both Councillor Seep and Councillor Hallahan that we're going to examine this building and doing anything with it. It cannot be on the basis of the museum. No, we don't have a proper museum facility. I agree with Councillor Biden on that. But we do have a great deal of other priorities that require large funds. And unless that building has a use of greater need than just a museum, we're going to have a problem. And the creation of a museum per se will require, as you said, staff and so on and so forth. I've been privy over the last couple of years to the numbers of people who use the Huron County Museum in jail. And to be quite frank, I was startled by the lack of visitors to that facility, and it has staff and large funds put towards it, and it is marketed and promoted. And yet it is actually rather pathetic when you see the numbers. It's sad, actually, and I shouldn't say pathetic, that's a bad word, it's sad. And when I see those numbers and I look at this facility here, that even if we put the people and the money into it, I'm afraid that I don't think we would ever attract a number of visitors to it to make it worthwhile. It would be a huge money pit. So we have to find some sort of use for that building if we're going to renovate it, far beyond just having a museum. And I wish staff good luck in hunting for a good use for that building, because this is a huge amount of money. I was very surprised when I saw the report. It was far in excess of what I thought it was going to be.
Councillor Wyden.
I don't disagree with anything that has been said, but there's a lot more interest in museum and things of that ilk outside of this council than in here. And people are interested in the kind of community they live in. And people see value in remembering our past and appreciating the past and having that kind of facility and the benefits that it comes. You never put up a museum expecting to make revenue from it. It's never going, it's very rare that it would ever be a profit center. But it has other values that may or may not. Now, we may not be able to afford getting those values. That's a moot point in this whole discussion. But on the other hand, we have private-public partnerships that can do an awful lot. If the community is really dedicated to doing this kind of thing, they may find the funds, they may find the support that they can get through grants or whatever. They may raise funds for it if they are really sincere about it. And we can't use the taxpayers' money to build all these things and create all of these things. But I don't think at the same time we should shut off the possibility of developing this kind of thing for the community and supporting that, but looking for various sources of funding and various kinds of management, which may not put it under our bailiwick, but somebody else looking after it. The worst thing that we could probably do is say, let's tear the building down. There would be bloody war if we even talked about that, because it's a part of the community, it's part of the vision, and that would be a sign that Wingham is dead. Wingham's gone, because it's not a great building, but it's an important part of the community. And to tear it down from a structural point of view is probably the best solution for it, but it's got a place in the heart of the community that I don't think we should ignore.
Councillor Ritzman.
I do agree with Brock in his point where he said that if it is of importance to the community, they will be able to raise the funds to help maintain the building. I know that there's a number of other groups that also use it. The Alice Munro Festival is one of them, and then with Halloween just around the corner, the Festival of Lanterns that's hosted here in town, they also make use of the museum, and it's a great time for the children to go through and look at all the artifacts and stuff that are there. So there is value in having a museum like that in our community for sure.
Did you want to speak again, Councillor Sight?
I just wanted to make the comment that if you were to look down the main street in Wingham 150 years ago, 250 years ago, it's not the same. Buildings fall, buildings are taken down, more buildings are built. The conversation is it important or is it not? I think that we have to be focused on what the needs are in the community. We've talked about it more and more times than before. Tax money cannot continue to go up. $3 million of investment, what's that gonna mean? Tax money is going up, period. So we can't, you can have your thoughts, and you can have your concerns, you can have your feelings about the building or about any project or any service that the community owns. But you're also gonna have to willing to pay for it. And if you don't like the high taxes in North Huron, that's one of the problems that we have. We have a lot of services that we all have to pay for. And we've got a lot of other problems. So let's figure out what the priorities are and go from there. That is, take the sentiment out of it. Sentiment only keeps you, sentiment is great, but it only is a little piece of it. Sustainability is a better function than sentiment.
Councillor Knott.
Maybe I'll clarify something. You know, I personally, I love museums, and when I travel to places, I go looking for art galleries and museums. They're wonderful. But at the same time, I don't think that we should be supporting it basically to a huge, supporting it, yes, but it's very, very careful as far as the money, as Councillor Seep says, we have to prioritize our funds. And there are a great many museums and so on in towns that I've been in now that are supported by the public and not by the community itself. They may own the building, as we would in this case, but they have groups, say Westcast, who contribute on an annual basis to maintain that museum and run it, in the community groups. And I, for one, will support them fully in any way we can if the groups will come forward. But I have a hard time just supporting us as a municipality, putting the money into it. And I hope the groups do come forward. I do think the museums and so on in history are a part of it. And in fact, as we read this report, I don't know where we're going to stand as far as we've designated this building as a heritage building. I guess the question could go back to Pat, if we actually had that designated officially by the Ontario, under the Ontario Heritage Building, or it was just council that designated it as historical significance.
I would really like to save that nugget of information for the report.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just, I have to clarify that myself. It was done back when all of the buildings were being declared. And since then, there's been a lot of changes to the heritage designation and the act, and what that means as far as building preservation, building renovations and such. So I'd like to add that as a paragraph in the report so council has a full understanding. It's unclear in the designation as to what is declared heritage in that building. Unlike this one, when it was declared, there are specific, it's the front facade and the this and the that. That one just has a designation in the bylaw and it is not specific. So got to do a bit of digging on that for you.
James?
Yeah, I was just looking at this and to direct the accountant, to direct staff to review a future options for the facility. What are we expecting her, Pat's going to be doing this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What are we expecting her to come back with? Like it's going to cost us something. And I think we need to really look at that. We really do.
Dwayne?
Maybe if I'll just comment in terms of, there's two things happening here. One is in terms of the building or the facility, and the other is museum, which is your service. So currently your museum service is being offered through the existing facility. It's not to say that the service can't be provided through another means or another mechanism. And I think that's one of the things that Pat, for example, will look at. You know, if council's priority is to provide a museum service, there may be other means to do that, perhaps at a cheaper cost. And that's part of what the research is that, you know, will be looked at in terms of the options. So I'm just throwing that out there, that the museum service and building don't necessarily are married together. They can be separated.
Councillor Slade.
So I'm guessing based on that comment, then in this report, we would see both options. Like seeing what can be done with the service if we wanted to keep it, if we didn't, and what the building could be used for within the confines of what the municipality could use it for.
I don't want to speak for Pat, but I think essentially, we'll, as staff, we'll look at the options, right? And so in terms of looking at the options, anything and everything will be on the table in terms of to review those options and decide, or not decide, but to bring back a report for council's consideration.
Councillor Bodden.
I'd just like to say that I'm sure we're going to get a response from the community, and that will be laden with sentiment. And that will be the important question that's going to come up. And it may not be $3 or $4 million out of the taxpayer's pocket, but some other solution. I flatly deny the fact that sentiment is not very, very important.
Okay. We have second. And we have to vote. Okay. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Moving to 6.7.1. It's a land purchase from Biax. Richard?
The recommendation for this report is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the CAO dated October 16, 2017 regarding the purchase of land from Biax International, and further that Council adopts bylaw number 89, 2017, being a bylaw to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with Biax International Inc. for the purchase of a 20-foot strip of land along the south side of North Street for the purposes of road widening, and further that Council approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw number 89, 2017 to be passed at the October 16, 2017 council meeting.
Councillor Knott, Councillor Hallahan. All in favor? Carried. Okay. 7.1 from Victim Services Huron County, and it's a request for a reduced ice rental rate. Richard?
So the recommendation that we have on here for this piece of correspondence is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the correspondence from Victim Services Huron County, and further that Council directs the Director of Recreation and Facilities to prepare a report and recommendation addressing Victim Services Huron County's request for a discounted rental rate for the Blythe Arena Ice to hold a hockey game on March 24th, 2018.
I'll move it.
Councillor Ritzman, seconds. Any further discussion? Pat?
So I just wanted to comment that when we came up with our fee waiving policy, we provided fees for all of our rentals, which excluded our sports field and ice rentals, because right now I have 5 different ice rates that we rent ice at, depending on the type of user, time of day, day of the week, and such. And so, I mean, having read this again and looked at things, I think I have a recommended rate based on what we would give for a community rate for ice. So I can definitely bring back that recommendation and support that argument. But I think it's the reason this one has come to question without our regular fee waiving policy is that we really don't have a rate that is for ice or sports fields. That is follows our fee waiving policy. That's more for meeting rooms, halls, and other kinds of spaces, parks, and things like that. So I just wanted to share that that's why this one has sort of bubbled to the surface as a question.
Councillor Knott?
Through yourself to Pat, did we not establish then a rate for charitable organizations?
Right, so we had for halls, meeting rooms, which was 70%. 70% of the pure rate is what we would discount a hall or meeting space or open space rental, that kind of stuff. We don't have that rate for ice. And so it doesn't exist. If an outside, the youth prime rate is probably the most adequate rate to recommend at 128.07 instead of the prime rate. Prime time rate is our regular rate all day Saturday, 140.05. But groups receive a discount based on whether or not they're providing a youth type program, which is a community program to all skill levels, whether they block their ice all year long with us. And then further, if it's in a non-prime time rate, like before 5 o'clock on Wednesday. So those are the kinds of rates that we work with on ice, and that is why I don't have a community rate set. It's rarely asked outside of these types of parameters when we rent ice to offer at a discount.
Wouldn't that be simply more efficient than to establish, say, a discount rate of whatever 30 or 40% on the rates for that period for charitable groups? Then it would be up to them to choose the period, depending on their cost. Wouldn't that simply be easier?
It might be, but then I add another rate, and I just got so many of them already. I would prefer us select one of our already established rate as the community rate. And that would be what I would consider the youth prime rate at 128.07. But I can bring that back in a summary report as to why I'm picking that rate as a recommendation.
Okay.
Mover and seconder on that, yeah? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, 7.2. It's from the Wing Golf and Curling Club. Richard?
So this piece of correspondence is somewhat of a sponsorship, but typically or historically we haven't done sponsorships per se. So what the recommendation that we have here is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the correspondence from the Wingham Golf and Curling Club for information purposes, and further that council directs staff to provide the Wingham Golf and Curling Club with the necessary donation request form. So if council wishes to proceed with sponsorship, then we could go that route, or if we want to provide them with a donation request form, then we can bring that back for consideration at budget time.
Can I make a motion for discussion purposes? So I think this one here, and through yourself, can I ask Pat here, do we do any advertising at the William Golf Club for the recreation department programs? No? Yes?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Are we utilizing their current program at the William Golf and Curling Club to promote your recreation programs?
We currently do not offer any programs at that site.
No, but do we advertise our programs at that site? They have boards now. We don't use them?
No.
Okay. So my recommendation really is that what we should do is just turn this to Pat, and perhaps she could find a way to utilize their board program to advertise the North Huron community programs to whatever level that she might determine it would be worthwhile, rather than going through this whole donation thing here. It's an advertising thing. That's really what it is. And I think it should be just directed back to the rec department. They're the only people that I can see would be worthwhile to advertise in there. And then she can make that decision whether or not she feels that it is worthwhile.
Sort of as our marketing plan, within our marketing plan.
Exactly. I don't think this is a donation request, really, in my opinion. It's a marketing request.
Okay.
So, Councillor Knott, you'd like to have the motion revised then to receive it for information and direct that the request be sent to the Director of Recreation Facilities to be incorporated into the marketing plan?
If she so determines it is worthwhile. Okay.
I'll second that.
Yep, I just, So you're leaving this completely up to me then, because the deadline on this is October 23rd?
Yep.
All right,
There you go.
you would like not, we will not come back to council then. It will just be whether or not we can measure their readership and exposure to make it worth our while.
Correct.
I was thinking that it's mainly for advertising, is what it is.
Yep.
Okay. We've got that. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and council reports. It seems Huron County weather worked on the weekend, the same as it did for the prior match. To black out a day on an event. I would speak from the, I'll say the dinner theater on Friday night involved with Transfigured Town. And I found it very interesting. Their lighting, their choice of music was very good. It was interesting talking to the number of people that were there, a very wide geographic area. But I'll zero in on the two young ladies that sat beside my wife and myself. They were from Toronto. It was their first road trip outside of GTA. They were surprised at how quickly they arrived in Blythe. They said, we were hours early because of planning for traffic, and they made it in 2 hours, which really surprised them. And I think some of those unusual things like that, maybe the best lasting legacy is that, yes, there are things that a 2-hour drive will get you to. And by the same token, it may only be 2 hours for us to certain things that we might be interested some other place as well. But I think there's probably a debt of gratitude to the staff that did their best to have the facilities as a rental, to show what we have in the north end of Huron County here, and to get people here that probably never would have for any other reason. So pass that thank you on, Pat, but I think it was using some of the local language. It was a zoo in Blythe because there was people all over Saturday morning, but that's not all bad. So that I'll conclude my remarks at that. Is there any committee reports that councillors want to make? Councillor Knott?
I would just like to speak to the Transfigured Town as well. And I would like, excuse me, I'm sorry. But I would like to have council, that was probably one of the best run events, even though they had their issue with the weather. I think it worked out very well, and it was an excellent program. There were probably more people on the street in Blythe on Saturday than I've seen in the last 5 years as treasures combined. And but it was all very orderly, very well maintained. The dinner on Friday night was very well handled. As Reeve says, he sat with people. My wife and I sat with people. We had a lady and her friend from Montreal, a woman and her young daughter who were from Calgary. We had also two girls with us, one from Stratford, one from Kitchener, and two other young girls, one from Stony Creek and one from Niagara Falls. So it was far in excess of just an hour way that these people came, and they were all staying somewhere in the area. And probably going back to our other little issue, that's probably the only thing anybody had to complain about was trying to find accommodation. Many of them found it through Airbnb, and were staying in various places, including bed and breakfast here in Wingham. A couple of them were staying up here, some were staying at the Ben Miller Inn. But I think altogether it was very well handled, and I think it's deserving of a letter from council congratulating them on their event and thanking them for the way they ran it and conducted themselves, and wishing them all the best and hoping that they come back for sure next year. But I think it was very well done.
Okay. Ray, are you adding comments or are you seconding?
Just a comment I had, does that have to be a motion?
I guess, does that have to be, one that is a motion? Do you send a letter?
It probably should be.
Okay, and I'll make that motion.
You're seconding and add your comment.
Well, I attended the victim services dance with the Stars Cottage banquet and dance, and the winner came from East Wabash and Auburn. So it was very well attended. It was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of this Washington staff there too.
Okay, back to the motion. That's was sort of side that I probably should have called the question. Is there any other comments on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Brock?
I have a report too.
Okay.
At our CHIP meeting last week, we had a lot of discussion about the speed on the roads and the speed of trucks when going through the village and elsewhere. And we had some literature on new devices that are being made available for checking speed, reporting speed, calculating, documenting speed rates, and even enforcement in terms of reading license plates and sending people tickets with mail. So these are being looked at. The county is looking at some of these devices, and as well as the OPP. And so that's a work in progress. They're very pricey. Maintenance is a big factor. They've got to be calibrated on a regular basis, and people have to be equipped to do that. But there are some very, very serious issues in terms of speeding. And so I mentioned a number of the concerns that I've heard in Blythe in terms of the speed of trucks passing through the village at a very high rate of speed. And in particular, I've had a complaint from trucks that are traveling south on Queen Street and approaching Road 25, that they start to pick up speed about McConnell Street or thereabouts, and by the time they get over the hill and they're heading towards that 25 intersection, they're going very, very fast. If somebody makes a stupid entry from Road 25 north or south, it'd be very difficult for them to stop. So I've put in a request for the speed sign to be made available to Blythe, and one of the areas that was recommended, and the police agreed with me on this location, although I was kind of surprised myself. It's somewhere around the Queen's Villa, the apartment buildings there, checking the speed at that point. Now this machine doesn't do any enforcement. All it does is announce how fast you're going. But it would give us an idea that it records the speeds so that we get an idea of the statistics on how fast people are going and vehicles are going at that rate. So in the course of the discussion, I asked Mike Hauser from the county, who's on the committee, about what's happening with the 425 intersection. And have any decisions been made? He tells me that that they have made a recommendation to county council that a flashing light be installed at that intersection, red for one direction and amber for the other direction. That was presented to county council and they turned it down. And so I pointed out to him that I'm really, really frustrated with that. In all of this, the months and months that we've been talking about this, never once have I heard a report from county. They've never told me anything about what they've decided or why. Maybe because they make silly decisions sometimes and they want to keep it quiet, but I think that I'm really, really concerned about that. And the fact that this decision had been made some time ago and was turned down, that's something that I think we, at least in the village, if not in the municipality, should have been notified about. So I'm hoping that there's going to be better communication or some communication with county roads and transport people. And so I think that's a very important need because it's still an intersection of concern, and the concern is growing. It's not fading away.
I will make the comment, the feeling that for the dollars involved, just putting a simple flasher was not going to give that much benefit over top of what is currently there in just stop signs on Blythe Road. There is some support for the actual, some form of stoplight, and that there's been enough problems with the stoplight that the county put in at the main corner in Seaforth, that has added into the discussion as to exactly what you put in for a stoplight and where all you have actual lights, because when you're heading south in Seaforth, it is very difficult to see the green or doing a left turn. And that basically there's some of these stoplights are way over engineered as to putting sensors in the pavement, as to the reality in Seaforth is it was way too expensive for a situation that was not improved.
As a counselor, you know, we requested a certain thing, this council requested a certain thing from the county. I think the biggest issue from my perspective, whether or not the light went in or the road sign, whatever, there was no communication back advising us of their decision. You know, at this point, I could really not sure whether they are required to provide us an explanation or not. We want to look at their county minutes. We could do that. But the issue is that send us a note. We advised you by sending you a letter and a petition and all that stuff. have the common courtesy to send something back, so that we as counselors don't have to get asked the question from somebody in Blythe or whatever. It says, well, have you heard anything? That's exactly what I had to say, because I don't know what happened. And that's the most frustrating part, is that you never seem to get anything back. And this is the second incident with the county about requesting certain things and never getting a response back. So it's not whether what decision they've made, because I know they have to make difficult decisions too. But have the common courtesy to send an advisement about what the decision was. Not that we have to necessarily, we can ask what your analysis is later. Just send us what the decision was. And that would help us as counselors when we get questions in our wards, even if we're not in our wards, what that decision is. People travel all those things all the time. And I think it's common courtesy. And I think sometimes that communication gets broke down. And I think that they need to be advised that that's a problem with us.
Councillor Knott.
100% agree. There's been no communication. And when I presented that petition to them, that was one of the requests, that we kept advised of anything that went on, and they've absolutely advised nothing. So I think the time has come that I'm going to make a motion that we send a formal request from the municipality of North Huron to County Council and request that they have someone of sufficient seniority from the Works Department come here and make a presentation and tell us exactly what is and is not going on, and that we send that to them now and make that as a formal request. It's time for them to come clean on what they've done and not done. There are traffic counters on the road, by the way, south of town and to the west of town. Nothing to the east and nothing to the north, so I'm not sure how they expect to get a complete picture out of those two traffic counters. But I think, as I said, I want to make a motion that we send a letter to County Council and request that we get a full presentation of what has and has not happened with regard to that intersection.
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay. Further discussion?
I just, I mean, it would be useful to have somebody from the roads department staff coming, but they are in a difficult position too. As I was talking to Mike Hauser about this, he has an opinion, and they made a report or made a recommendation, and it was turned down. He had no idea what the background was. At least he didn't inform me about what the background is. So he's kind of, he might have difficulty if he is the person giving an explanation of why the decision was made, whatever the decision was. Anyway, I think it's important to raise the question.
I'll just point out that I asked for somebody of sufficient authority. So let's just make it really specific and ask the Director of Public Works and Roads for the county.
Well, that's what Mike Hauser is.
I know, but you bring up a good point. So he's not, I don't think he's assistant.
He's
right?
not the director.
He's not the director,
okay.
Assistant director. So we want the director himself to come and make this presentation.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. And that is it from council member reports. Moving to 8.3.1. Richard, you
So you may recall a few meetings ago that Deputy Reeve Campbell made a notice of motion, a request here, and so he is the mover on that notice of motion, but I will read it again and then we can ask for a seconder. And so that notice of motion was that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby direct the clerk to request that a representative of the OPP attend council to provide information regarding call statistics as well as an update regarding criminal activity in the Blythe and East Wawanosh wards.
I'll second.
Councillor Wyden seconds. Further discussion? James?
I probably hear daily from people of criminal activity that's going on right now. And there's nothing being done. And that's the biggest concern I've got here.
On the one concession, to my knowledge, 2 locations are all that haven't had some traffic or drone surveillance or whatever. And basically, possibility of a vicious dog or irregular schedules where people can be in and out at any time of the day or night are the biggest deterrents to having thefts occur. But when 90% of the properties on a rural concession are visited by people wanting to have a completely discounted item that they would just pick up and go. And Councillor Hallahan had his 4-wheeler under lock and chain, but it was bolt cutters that took it in the middle of an afternoon. That's what's happening. So I agree with having a little bit of a discussion with, as requested in this motion. Councillor Hallahan.
Actually, I was robbed twice in 2 weeks. My chainsaw, but I mean, I guess what we're asking here for is the number of calls is it they're getting, or like call statistics, and then I'm not clear on what we're asking or how. I know that I was robbed twice and I had my possessions back the same day, next day. So I was quite impressed with the police and my investigation both times. But so I'm not sure. I guess is that what we're talking? Is the number of calls, and is that what we're asking them for, or whether we actually are?
Calls, and that if they see anything as a deterrent other than just having to have everything so it can be locked. I'm not sure that we will get much more than the statistics because of a certain amount of privacy information. Councillor Syke?
One of the things that you probably will get when there was a meeting I think it was last August, the OPP put it on when they were doing their action plan, or where they talk about how their service delivery for the rural areas, how it's determined, and how it's metrics and a whole bunch of other things. So one of the things that that part of that might be that, just to kind of give some background about how they determine where they're going to be in the county. Because that's ultimately the idea of how they service the county, because that's ultimately what you're under is the county OPP model. So at the end of the day, I think call statistics and updating criminal activity, that's part of all their discussion with how they're dealing with the county-wide initiative about about rural criminal activity. We talked, that was at the OPP costing center when they talked about it. So part of that will be, I suspect, in that proposal or that discussion that comes up, is to kind of give council an idea of what is their delivery model on those areas, because it's different than the town of Wingham, and it's different for Blythe, East Wanash than it is another area that the OPP covers. So I think that might be part of their, I don't know, but I know that would probably help with the discussion about call statistics and about the criminal activity discussion about Huron County. So, I don't know that, I'm guessing a lot of that conversation was dealt with at those meetings in last August when they were doing their business plan, I think it was.
Across the river last Friday night, the drone was spotted. The OPP were contacted. They tracked it to Clinton, and they lost the drone in Clinton, and it just completely disappeared. Why? How did this happen? You see, one of the neighbors had picked this up. We called the OPP, and they responded immediately. They happened to be in the area, and they tracked this drone to Clinton and lost it. There's a lot of farmers that are really getting upset. And I think we're going to find the farmers are going to take some of this activity into their own hands. I was told I couldn't shoot the drone down. I said, if I shoot it down, you'll never find it. But I can't shoot it into the air. That's what they were told. That's what I was told. I was shooting a goose. The drones happened to fly by, I guess.
Goose license?
For decent season.
Goose running season right now. Yeah.
Councillor Vaughn.
I think it was you who mentioned a vicious dog. I have an issue with that right now, for which I have no solution. What was the case that you're referring to?
They were in. They started working at the shop door to get in. They heard the dog on the other side, and they left.
Oh, okay. It's different.
So maybe just in terms of the call statistics, so under 5.1 of the Police Services Act, so right now the OPP are policing East Wanash and Blythe Ward, and the OPP provide they generate reports on a monthly basis, and those have been coming to the township, but those have not been. Council hasn't had the benefit of seeing those call statistics reports. So that's one of the pieces here in terms of the OPP will tell you in terms of what calls are getting, what activity they're seeing. And then I think further to that, what the deputy has raised in terms of, so there's kind of two things happening here. One is the call statistics in terms of, let's say over the last 6 months or 8 months in terms of what activity they're seeing and what's happening. And then the other piece to that is, I think getting back to the deputy read is, specific, you'll see a chart, and it'll have all the different types of criminal activities. And then I'm going to guess that what you're going to see in those call statistics is an elevated number on your break-in enters. I'm going to guess that's what you're going to see, but I can't say it for sure. And then that, is an opportunity perhaps to, speak to the OPP and, get their comments on it and what they're doing about it. And so that's what I'm envisioning in terms of having the OPP come. But
Those are not.
Can I ask why we as a council are not seeing that report on a monthly basis?
I don't know, to be honest. When I arrived, during the OPP cost servicing process that we're currently going through, I became aware of the fact that this information was here, but it was not flowing through for whatever reason. So I think this will, ensure that council sees that information.
Well, I'd like to recommend that we see that every month when it comes in.
Absolutely.
When does it usually come, in the beginning of the month or probably around the 15th of the month?
I don't know specifically when it comes in, but as we receive it, we'll certainly bring it forward to council.
The next councilman, if we can do that in the future,
Yep.
that would keep everybody
Absolutely.
a little more informed of what's going on. In that regard.
Councillor Slade?
What I will tell you as a police services chair, we never receive it either. So we never seen it at all either. Because that was a question that I actually had with the OPP at the time of the call. I'm thinking it would be interesting to have that information. And they said that it was available. Well, we've never seen it. So it was one of those things where, again, communication is critical, and you don't know what you don't know. And that's ultimately, as a counselor, sometimes you don't know what information you're supposed to be getting until you just don't get it, until the question is asked. So
can we add that remnant that it comes to council and gets forwarded to the police services board at the same time, make sure they get a copy as well?
well, we get it with the police chief has some information that he's been
You should be
giving us.
getting it, I would
Yeah,
think.
so we now get it, but it wasn't something we were pervious to before.
For sure.
All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Moving to bylaw number 89, 2017.
So bylaw number 89, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize the Regional Clerk to sign on behalf of council an agreement to purchase and sale between the corporation and the Township of North Huron and Biax International Inc. for a portion of land for the purpose of street widening. The lands approximately 0.4 of an acre are geographically located on the south side of North Street, legally described as Plan 410, park lots 19, 20, 21, park lots 22, 23 as RP 22R3635, parts 1 to 7, 596 Cedar Street, Brigham Ward, Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Regional Clerk and engrossed in the bylaw.
Move.
And Councillor Knott seconds.
Can I interject one question here,
Yes.
which I forgot earlier? Half of the cost of this is being paid by
Yes.
by our good neighbors. Have we got official confirmation that they're in for this, or is this something they're going to pass at their council meeting tomorrow night?
No.
Actually,
They've already passed it? Perfect, thank you.
all in favor? Carried. Okay. Bylaw number 90, 2017.
Bylaw number 90, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize the Regional Clerk to sign on behalf of council a source protection plan part 4 enforcement transfer agreement with Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Regional Clerk and engrossed in bylaw.
So
Councillor Wyden, Deputy Reeve Campbell. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 91, 2017.
Bylaw number 91, 2017, being a bylaw to amend Schedule B of bylaw number 63, 2017, and Schedule C of bylaw number 117, 2016, being a bylaw to adopt an emergency management program for the Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Regional Clerk, and engrossed in the bylaw.
Councillor Knott, Councillor Sype. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 92, 2017.
Bylaw number 92, 2017, being a bylaw to appoint a Director of Public Works for the Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Regional Clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Sype, Councillor Hallahan. All in favor? You're officially hired.
On the clock.
Um, Bylaw number 93.
Bylaw number 93, 2017, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw number 1488, a bylaw to permit public games and sports in the afternoon of the Lord's Day, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the reading clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Vaughan, Councillor Knott. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 94.
Bylaw number 94, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize the reading clerk to sign on behalf of council an agreement with Real Energy Corporation for the design build of LED streetlights in the township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the reading clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw.
Deputy Campbell, Councillor Vaughan. All in favor? Carried. Okay, any announcements? No? Okay, in other business, 12.1, for getting the Economic Development Committee going, that we need to appoint 2 members from council. Is there a motion for appointment? Councillor Allen?
I'll nominate Trevor Sight.
Okay.
I'd nominate Bill Knott.
Is there any other? Or when you're nodding, are you
I'd like to
doing a
nominate myself.
self-nomination?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in reverse order, you would stand.
Yes.
Yes, I'll stay.
You would stand. Okay,
Sorry, so all 3 are willing to stay.
all 3 are
Those
willing
are
to
the
stand.
nominations.
Well.
We need an election.
An election, and should that be?
Talking us through donuts at these meetings or something?
Or,
I can't find people that volunteer.
So,
We usually do this in secret ballot.
yeah, closed.
No, not necessarily.
But to me, the 3 who are not nominated vote.
All the nominations are closed.
okay,
Second.
okay. Well, do we have pieces of paper
Yeah.
where, and I'm seeing, requesting
They're doing this on counter
2 names. Put 2 names on each of the ballots. Donna, can you pick them up, please?
I'll get it back.
Wore a hat in years.
Yes. What's your Canadian hat on your head?
Why didn't she bring her hat? Maybe she didn't.
There we go. You got your 2?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. More money now?
Takes me to read.
Thank you, Donna.
So we have 7.
And
So if we go through, right? So you have to score them.
three, help.
Who's gonna drop the confetti in the burrito?
Are the Russians trying to influence this vote?
They already have.
Those ties never go back a number of years, so.
Didn't notice the subliminal messages flashing on your iPad?
Really?
No cameras in the council chamber.
7.5 years I've been covering this, and never has this happened. I didn't take a picture. No recording devices.
That's a recording device, it's a digital image recording device, so your viewfinder.
Let's get that bylaw. Just kidding. Just kidding.
So they already have Photoshop.
So we have the results here. We have,
Just announce the winners.
okay, we have the winners of Councillor Sipe and Councillor Knott.
Okay. And
Does he need a motion to destroy the balance?
so you will destroy the ballots.
Since you don't have a shredder, you're going to have to eat them.
I did.
You want me to read 12.2? Scheduling the budget meeting?
We'll have to have the motion for, so we do have a motion then to fill in those two that we should make. And it is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby appoints the following members to the Council of the Township of North Huron Economic Development Committee. That would be Councillor Bill Knott and Councillor Trevor Sipe.
Second.
Councillor Vodden and Deputy Reeve. All in favor? Okay. And 12.2, scheduling of a budget meeting.
So we have a motion here that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approve an initial budget meeting date to be scheduled for November 13th, 2017 at 6 p.m. to be held in the Township of North Huron Council Chambers.
Councillor Dot, Councillor Ritzman and Inga. All in favor? Carried. 12.3, scheduling of a town hall public meeting.
Move it.
You're moving.
Yep.
Councillor Sipe moves. Seconder.
I have a conflict of interest for that night. It should be the Maitland Valley.
If council wishes, that's a recommendation. Council can change the date for sure.
There's another suggested date that works, or if you'd like us to bring back other dates, we can do that.
I would suggest the 14th, if that's okay. Anybody else?
It's okay with me.
I'm good with the 14th. I'm usually out of town on the Wednesdays, so 14th is probably better for me.
Excuse me. Is this set for 7 p.m.? Or
6 p.m.
6 p.m.?
6 to 7.
No,
6.
6 p.m.
You should get to 6.
627, what's up?
On sixth grade, we mentioned sixth. Six and seven, seven.
So the motion is for November 14th.
So the motion would then be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby schedule a town hall public meeting to be held on November 14th, 2017 from 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. at the Belgrave Community Center.
You're moving. James and Trevor,
I just want to make a comment.
go ahead.
My only comment is if needed, it will be extended.
Yes,
It's not a hard 7 o'clock. Like, I want to make that perfectly clear to people who are listening and all that stuff, that it's not a hard 7 o'clock. If it's needed, we will extend it.
But it could be 6:45.
Could be 6:45.
6 o'clock until such time as we've exhausted.
This is the Monday meeting or the
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
meeting?
Yeah.
We didn't put a time limit on the budget meeting.
No.
We didn't put a time limit on the budget meeting.
That-
I'm serious, you know what happened last year, perhaps we should specify a time limit for the budget meeting.
I believe the protocol that
11 p.m.
11, that we would need to have
in motion.
a motion to go beyond that.
Everybody happy with that?
I mean,
So maybe I'll just, so what we're proposing this year, and what I'm proposing this year is kind of, I'll call it 3 budget sessions. And this first budget session that we're talking about for the 13th is what I refer to as setting the stage. So essentially it's to give council information, for consideration as you move through the budget process. And then there'd be 2 so that's kind of the setting the stage. Council will be provided with information, things to think about, things that are on the horizon, that sort of type of information. But council won't be, there won't necessarily, unless council so chooses, but the whole idea is, I call it setting the stage. Then there'll be 2 subsequent budget sessions typically, and then those will be the sessions where the department and the budget of that department will be delivered and provided to council. And those will be preliminary numbers at that point. So basically, it will give you an idea in terms of, based on the input that we're receiving from the various departments, how are things looking, right? Where are we sitting? Are we, what sort of a tax increase are we looking at? And council perhaps can give us some direction in terms of what is comfortable for council, in terms of, things that you definitely want in the budget, or things you're saying, no, we don't want that in the budget. So it's kind of the preliminary number stage, this is how it's shaping up, and then we'll be looking for input and feedback from council at that point. So typically, generally 2 hours. My experience has been that when you get beyond the 2 hours, it's a lot to take in. But again, that would be council's prerogative. If you wanted to go 3, 4, it'd be council's choice. But my experience is kind of after two hours, I know myself, it's you're kind of starting to go.
We're done, aren't we, Brock?
3 hours is not too bad.
3?
Well, 3, yeah, we can do 3.
Do we wait for that setting the stage to give you what we would like to see for budgets? Because you've already mentioned the TI word, I heard it come out of your mouth, which said tax increase. So if I give you my recommended 10% reduction in taxes and expenditures this year now, so that you can start working towards it and you're setting the stage, would that be acceptable?
Well, I think what we'll do, we'll look at the setting the stage, because I think you as council, in terms of, it's been indicated, there's some, we already know, we have some decisions that need to be made. And they're not going to be easy decisions, right? And we have one currently that we discussed tonight. And council's gonna look at that, and council's gonna bring you back some options for your consideration, okay? But it'll be in terms of, you know, what my thinking around it is in terms of what we're gonna work with Dawn on this, kind of, you know, what the last 5 years have been like, you know, and then in terms of the next 5 years, and kind of how things are looking and where things are sitting right now. And then there's definitely some capital expenditures, you know, that, you know, council will be before council and for council to give staff direction on. So, but I think it's important in terms of that we set the stage, you know, in terms of where we at, what's happened in the past. And then, you know, based on that, then we'll go right into the budget itself, and we'll start looking at the numbers and look at and seeing how things are shaping up. I mean, we also know council has received the asset management report. There's, you know, reports that are in the works, and all those reports, you know, that will all have to be looked at and to take into consideration as we go through the budget process. So that's kind of.
James.
And I like what you're saying, but should we set a date just for council to sit down and prioritize some of the things that we want to see in 1, 2, or 3 years? So that when people come and ask questions, well, when are you thinking of doing this? We do have something to go on. Because we have some real big issues coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to prioritize as a council where we think we want to be here and what we want to do. But maybe some of those things that's not even on our agenda. That we need to be honest with people and say, this is not on our agenda right now. And where I'm coming from, I think it's something that we should do. That's just my thinking, maybe.
Well, okay, you know, I'm open to input from council in terms of how you want to proceed.
Councillor Slate.
I think this needs to be, in my opinion, that night of the setting the stage needs to be a fluent discussion between staff and council, where staff sees the recommendation of where priorities need to be, and where council needs to decide whether that is the real way priorities need to be. And we have a month to figure that out. We've had 3 years to figure that out. We need to decide. We look at we got a picture of our financials today, or in that, those are the departments. Within those departments, there's services. Which ones are we gonna deal with? Which ones are we not going to deal with? We've dealt with a few. But we need to me, it needs to be a fluent conversation on that day about what staff wants to recommend and whether we have the appetite to exceed that recommendation, or we come back and say, staff, we need you to we need something else. This doesn't work for us. This doesn't work for the municipality. We have to give that direction. But I think that's the night to do it. We have been 2 other meetings to figure out how we're going to implement that strategy, because again, at the end of the day, when we sign off the budget, that's the determining factor of what services lives and what doesn't. Me, like that's ultimately, there's some that are already in the hopper. We already know that. Again, I think coming with that realistic plan that we have and what staff's plan is on the same night, what they think it is, might help us bridge a gap between where we see it and where staff have lived it every day and where we are not seeing what we're seeing. I think that will help us. I think we need to let them help us, but I think we need to give that direction too about what we want of this municipality. I think that has to come from us. We're the elected officials.
That makes a pretty full agenda for one night, though. Mm-hmm. In my thinking, I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying, but to put all that into one night, Because some of those items are going to take a lot of discussion. And some of them might not take any discussion, but I think that we need to set a longer time frame for it. That's just my thinking.
So, you're right.
Yeah, so let's, the budget deliberation doesn't need to be 3 meetings. It doesn't. We went till May this year to approve it. Like,
But that's
if it
not the
takes,
way-
that's not the right way to do it either, I agree. But there's no sense ramming it all together for the sake of ramming it together. Let's do it right, but have the discussion. And I think some of that discussion needs to be more meetings, so the public has more information, not spread out a longer period of time so they can absorb it, as opposed to having 3 standard meetings, that's all we're talking about, bang, it's done, conversation's over. And I'm not sure the public really will understand what we've talked about, because there is a lot of big things that we have to talk about. So if it doesn't get approved till January, well, we're any worse off. I don't think, since a councillor, in 3 years, we've approved a budget before February. So let's not try to rush it for the sake of rushing it. Let's try to do it right. And I think by doing this structured meeting, and if it takes 6 meetings, it takes 6 meetings. Let's do it right.
But I'd like to see this done before. This brainstorming meeting before the ones in our staff have to start thinking, well, now, we've had this on, but council doesn't want this on. And if we do that the first night, then, then we're into that again. So that's just my thinking.
I think we try setting the table with the information, as much information. If there's topics that take a long time, we may have to put a second meeting together for getting all of it out. If that happens, it happens. But I think definitely on the 13th, we figure on starting with it, and we'll work through it if we need more time, because it's going to be too long a meeting with enough things for another meeting. We'll schedule another meeting on it.
Where I think our deputy councilors might be very helpful. If we start off with nitty-gritty things on the first meeting, and then later we come with some big shifts that we're going to come up with, a lot of that could be wasted time. Whereas if we started looking at where are the big shifts that we want to make, here's an area where we really need to cut back. And so we sort of take the landscape approach at the beginning and say, these are major changes that we need to discuss and either agree to or disagree, and then get into the finer tune once we know where the big shifts are going to be and things that we need to focus on in detail. That's just off the top of my head. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, I mean, just, in terms of if council has ideas or knows in terms of direction, if council knows the direction they want to go, if council knows services they want to be reviewed, if they know of areas they want to cut back on, certainly from a staff's perspective, we would appreciate getting that input. Because then that helps us in terms of moving forward the budget process. My sense is in terms of there's items that require further discussion. My understanding is that there have been things brought forward to council in the past that have not, things have been brought forward for council for consideration. And council has given the direction of maintaining status quo. Okay, so, and that's fine. If that's the direction of council to remain staying status quo, I'm comfortable with that. But the flip side to that is then when you start looking at your tax base and you start looking at your percentages, you know, council has to accept what money needs to be raised to support that. But if council knows already in terms of areas they want to look at cutting or areas they want to cut back on or things they want looked at, you know, but for sure, we as staff, we would appreciate hearing that because then that will assist and guide us through the budget in terms of the report. But my sense is that, again, I'm not, you tell me, but my sense is that I'm not sure. My sense is that there needs to be a discussion at the council table in terms of identifying your priorities. Okay, so I think that discussion, and that's part of, from my perspective, setting the stage, you know, in terms of here's what you've been doing, and if you maintain that, here's what the next, so how I'm potentially framing this is, here's what you've been doing, and here's what it's been costing. And then projecting, if you continue with that and projecting into the future, you're going to have to raise X number of dollars, right? But in addition to that, that's your existing. Then you have to factor in, you received an asset management report. You received a museum report. You have other reports that are in the process, and I'll be surprised if it comes in and says you have nothing to do. Okay? So you have to look at your existing, project your existing into your future, and then add on. And then if council says, we're comfortable, we like what we've done, we're liking what we're projecting into, add on these things, and staff comes back and says, you need a 12% tax increase. I'm just throwing the number, you know, who knows? Is that comfortable for council? Right? And I don't know. Maybe it is. Anyways, not too bad.
Okay.
I have to admit that my problem is that I would like to look at this budget as a pile of gravel. It could be moved around nicely. We could lower the pile, or we could move it over here, move it over there. Really, when we get down to it, it's like a pile of concrete blocks. They're already frozen in, and we can't cut back on this because it's tied to all of these other things. And it's a very, very difficult process. And that's nothing new to anybody, I'm sure, but it's very, very difficult to find those areas where you can, without damaging a lot of other things, make tremendous changes that you'd like to make. Not easy.
Yeah, it's not an easy process. A budget is not an easy process because, you know, you have to identify your priorities. You know, you have so many funds, and the funds only go so far. So you have to, what are your priorities, and where do you want to spend your resources?
Well, I think we've got the meeting set up for the 13th. We will try and put some facts and figures together, and we're probably going to have to do some priority setting, and if the discussion gets too long, we can extend it to another meeting. But I look at this as getting it started anyway.
Yes.
So I think we'll carry on as to the perceived, setting the stage, having that background, having a few of those other reports to work with, and look at the big picture. So, I think that's pretty well consensus that it'll get us started choosing as to where we're going in the budget. Okay. If there's nothing else on that, we do have a closed session. And there's 4 different subjects that we would be discussing. Richard, do you want to go through them?
Sure. So the recommendation we have here is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby proceeds at 9:21 to an in-camera session, close the public to discuss the following: Section 239 2B, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee, and Section 239 2F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose regarding property damage. Section 239 2E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board regarding joint use agreement. Section 239 2B, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal board or local employee, property standards. And Section 239 2B, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee, and Section 239 2D, labor relations or employee negotiations for building departments.
Okay, Councillor Sight moves. Councillor Hallahan seconds. All in favor? Okay. Short recess.